the evolutionary past has little influence on the nature of mind, and that culture creates mind. In a sense, culture floats above the mind. It's separate. Evolutionary psychologists said, no, you're born bundled with windows. You come to the world knowing a whole bunch of stuff with predetermined software packages. It's replete with predetermined content. It's not just structure, but it's content-laden structure. Evolution is the only way to understand what the nature of that content is. And in fact, it's minds that create culture, not culture creating mind. Probably what's really true is that there is a reciprocal interaction. When we evolved fire, I don't know, 1.6 million years ago, when we not evolved fire, but when we invented fire and the use of fire, we started cooking things. It changes how our teeth maybe had to be structured so our jaws could get smaller, our teeth could get straight up and down. That's culture. All right, and I'll go through quickly on this. Evolutionary psychology. This is what evolutionary psychologists are interested in. Universal natural competencies, not individual differences. Not why you like this and you don't like that. Not really interested in individual differences, but universal structures that's true for all human beings. Here's the idea. Guess what? Humans have a nature. All animals have a nature. This is in contrast to the standard social science model that suggests that our nature is to be natureless. We're infinitely flexible. Evolutionary psychology says, no, we have a nature. And we can understand the perceptual mechanisms, linguistic competencies, mate selection and preferences, group living, our reference to status, our prestige, dominance. Why is it that we like to see a really important person fall on their knees and get mustard on their face? The Germans have a nice word for this. Say, what is it? Schadenfreude. And we don't have a word for it, but you recognize it, don't you? The fall of the tall poppies. The fact that we have emotions that exhibit themselves in certain ways, and very subtle emotions too. The fact that we engage in reciprocity, both for kin and non-kin. That we have moral evaluations. We have cheater detection mechanisms. And a whole bunch more. Okay, here's the idea. We have a universal cognitive architecture. That architecture can be understood with respect to how it solves its adaptive problems in a human EEA, environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. That is related to a cognitive program, a mechanism, software that's replete with if-then kinds of rules. That's the idea. If this happens, do this. If that happens, do this. And that there's a neurological, physiological basis for these programs, and that we can make inferences from one to the other. That these are the three levels of analyses, and we can make inferences from this to this, from this to this, and all the way up and down. This is sort of the large structure in the claim of evolutionary psychology. And another analogy, standard social science model says we have a general purpose brain. That's what we got. Evolutionary psychology says, oh, no, you don't. You got a whole bunch of specialized tools and designed to do very special kind of things. And even though this thing right here was designed to cut, now that I have it, now I can pick my teeth. Now it can do other things that it otherwise couldn't do or that it was evolved to do. But this is maybe in one picture captures the difference in the claims of what the standard social science model suggests and what evolutionary psychology is suggesting is an alternative model. Okay, 5 guiding principles of evolutionary psych. I'll go through this quickly, relatively quickly. What are we doing on time here?
We're about 50 minutes.
Okay. Are you guys still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. This is from Kosmides and Tooby. You can get this on their primer site. They talk about it in a variety of places. I'm summarizing it because they go in a great deal of depth on this. But here's the first principle. This is what evolutionary psychologists sort of axiomatically claim. The brain is a naturally evolved computer designed to generate behavior appropriate to environmental circumstances. It's a naturally evolved computer, literally. And it's a computer in what respect? It processes information. Metaphorically? Well, that's a good synonym for it. Literally. That's the first principle. These neural circuits were forged by natural selection to solve problems faced by our ancestors during evolutionary history. Our evolutionary psychologists focus on the Pleistocene, about 1.8 million to 10,000 years ago. That's about the time when we start, just shortly after Homo habilis started doing its thing. And we had Homo erectus and Homo ergaster, and we started seeing the Homo line. This is the hunter-gatherer period up until the agricultural period about 8 to 10,000 years ago. And so this is the Paleo period, so to speak. And so this is the Pleistocene. 1.8 million to 10,000 years ago is when the fine-tuning for our brains occurred, according to evolutionary psychologists. Freud was right. Most of what goes on in your mind is hidden from view. Pinker says we all suffer from the delusion that there's some magic wonder tissue operating because we do not have privileged cognitive access to the mechanisms. We cannot look into our own minds and see these things happening. Can any of you generate an image of a cow in your head? Can you? Okay, now I asked you to generate an image of a cow. Some of you did. And I just asked you, and most of you generated the image just like this, yes? And so, let me ask you some questions. How far is that cow from you? I mean, are you right there to the cow? Or is the cow at some distance in your mind's eye? Is the cow facing you? Or is it sideways? What color is the cow? Is it day or night?
You're psychic.
I'm psycho. Is there a background? No matrix white rooms? Okay, look what I just did. I asked you, quite simply, to generate an image of the cow and the great Oz emerged. And there it is, right there. But what none of you can do, I'm guessing, I'll go on a limb. I'm sure. That none of you can look into your own mind to see where all those decisions were made. Because your mind, your brain had to make a decision. How far away is it? What is its orientation? What is its color? What is its background? Jello can't do that. Brains do that. You do it automatically, and you can't look into your own mind to see where it happened. My guess is you had no conscious decision for any of those things. They simply appeared. What evolutionary psychologists are going to say is that there is incredibly complex circuitry that's going on just beneath the surface. What comes natural and easy to you comes natural and easy to you because there's underlying circuitry that's in play. It's highly complex. That's why evolutionary psychology is talking about making the natural seem unnatural. When I teach this course, I ask my students, imagine you're an anthropologist from Alpha Centauri, and you've been sent to this planet. And you've been sent to this planet to observe these interesting critters called humans. Don't judge. Be a Jane Goodall. Don't worry whether it's a good chimp or a bad chimp. It's just, it is what it is. If it then all of a sudden doesn't seem natural, well, why should I favor my child? Why should I worry about whether somebody who's more important than me, what they think about me? Why should I worry about that? But I do. As Pinker suggests, why do fools fall in love? Why? Can you choose to fall in love? Can you choose to fall in love? Can you make yourself feel love? If you can, let me know, because I want to know how you do it. The Oval Office here, the analogy here is that the president kind of knows the stuff that's going on, doesn't have any idea really what's going on and all the details out there, but all that stuff is going on. But the great Oz, the cow, the president in the Oval Office. That's what we are aware of. Principle 4, different neural circuits are specialized to solve different adaptive problems. This is misleading because it's not like you have little separate modules, but the modules are considered organs that are spread throughout the brain. This is what a lot of people say, come on, the brain is not modular. Well, we don't mean that there's a carburetor there. No, it's not modular in that way, but they're specialized organs. And some of the neurons many of the neurons that are in play for one organ are also in play with another organ. They're spread and they're interacted with each other. And finally, our modern skulls house a Stone Age mind because of evolutionary lag. So our brains, our modern minds, are geared to be able to respond to environmental conditions of our ancestors. The extent to which current conditions are similar to ancestral conditions is the extent to which we can consider these mechanisms adaptive. But now things have changed very quickly because we invented culture. And we change our environment much faster than evolutionary time. And so we get into trouble because of what are called mismatched things. During evolutionary history, it was hard to get salt and fat and those things that we just love and crave because they're high-calorie sources, but now they're ubiquitous. We have our evolutionary history killing us in terms of eating too much fat, too much salt and sweets. Don't worry about reading this, except for this last line. There's no such thing as general intelligence. According to Kosmides and Tooby and other psychologists, there's no such thing as general learning or any other general ability to solve problems. Because there's no such thing as a general problem. There are only specific problems. And the problems that are involved in finding a mate are very different than in finding a place to live, than being able to determine who's cheating on you in terms of, did they give me my meat back? In terms of forming male coalitions and going out and fighting. All of those problems are very specialized problems. Other evolutionary psychologists say, well, there might be some general learning mechanism. We don't really know. We can call it concept formation, that kind of stuff. They claim no. I'll show you this later. Evolved perceptual mechanisms. Take a look at the cars on the left. Which car is the biggest car? The middle, the left, the right?
They're all the same.
As it turns out, this car is much bigger than this car. Our brains take into account perspective to produce a sense of size. Our perception of size is influenced by our perception of distance. Because of the distance effect here, our brains will actually make this appear to be bigger than this, or the same size, when in fact this car is bigger than this car. How many of you have seen the full moon at the horizon and then the moon at the zenith? You realize it's the same size moon. The atmosphere isn't spreading anything about. That's not what's happening. It's the same size. But why does it look so big on the horizon? You have something to compare it to, that's true, but you even see the moon illusion in the ocean as it's rising on the horizon of an ocean. The idea is that your brain computes size based on distance. This is an automatic algorithm. You're not in control of it. There it is. Take a look at this stimuli. How would you describe these? A series of innies or outies? Bumps or craters? First of all, rows or columns? Well, they could be diagonals. But isn't there a bias to see these as columns? And our brain kind of groups these things as columns. Why? And doesn't this seem to be an outie? And this an innie? There seems to be an underlying assumption and mechanisms that are in play that you are not aware of or can't control. This is your assumption about the direction of light. Light, you assume light comes from the top down. You don't even know that you assume this. You automatically assume it. And so, I'm going to switch over here, Jack, right next to you, and jump out of this for a second. I'm going to turn this. Take a look at the far left column, an innie or an outie? An innie or an outie? I'm just going to turn it around. Becomes an outie. It's pretty stable, isn't it? This predicts that if I do it this direction, that innie and outiness become much more ambiguous, unstable. But when it is, the information is consistent with